The landscape's changing, like the demographics are changing, the makeup of our teams are changing. We're using software providers a lot more, we're using partners a lot more. So in order, when you have a very hybrid or distributed team, the ability for that leader to motivate, connect, soothe things sometimes, pull people into a room and say, hey guys, we need to work through this. That's really a key skill.
Not everyone makes the news, but behind every growth-driving experience, product, and transformation are experts who shape the outcome. Welcome to Behind the Growth, a podcast for digital leaders and those aspiring to become one. Each episode features a candid conversation with a remarkable individual. Join us as we focus on their struggles, wins, and lessons learned you won't find anywhere else. Let's get started.
Welcome to Behind the Growth. I'm your host, Mudassar Malik, and today we're celebrating Lino Caccavelli, Vice President, Direct Financial Services at Simplii Financial. Lino, it's great to have you on the show.
Hi, Mudassar. Thanks for having me. Pleasure being here.
Lino, thank you. I'd love to start with your journey. And, it's interesting how, you were a software developer at the start, and then I'm curious what motivated you, and then later on joining the financial industry. So talk us through with that.
Yeah, I think what's important to know, and looking back now, I grew up in an environment really where everybody in my family and the surrounding family, we were kind of tradespeople in the building industry, right? My dad was a carpenter, my brother was in the trades, family members and whatnot. So for me, growing up, weekends were kind of working with my father and, repairing chimneys or working on home renos or doing driveway repair, all that kind of stuff. So we kind of grew up in a family where we were building things. And I think the other aspect that, when reflecting now, when you build things, you kind of have to understand how they fit together. And it also attuned us, because my parents kind of raised us all the same way, is when something breaks, you kind of try to fix it. So again, in order to fix something, you need to have kind of those basic skills of, well, how does this thing work and how does it whatnot. So we're all kind of wired. It's kind of a family trait. We're all kind of wired into that sphere. So rewind a little bit back into the 1990s. I'm in university trying to figure out my path and whatnot, and nudged into kind of, hey, IT might be something, right? It's the advent of the internet. I'm dating myself, yes, and as I started to take a few courses, it kind of clicked for me. Like software development was kind of logical, the way you kind of thought through stuff, very similar now looking back to the same tenets, whether you're building something physical, software perspective, to building something in the real world through construction. There's a planning, designing, building, how does this thing work? So I really enjoyed it. So that's how I got into programming. It wasn't something growing up that was, again, based on my age, it wasn't something that your parents kind of encouraged you to get into because it was more the traditional arts. But at that time, as I was in university, the internet and was really taking off. So that's how I got into software programming.
Were you challenged, or was there any challenge, or were you resisted when you said, I want to become a software engineer?
No, I don't think so. Like, again, my parents, coming from a, first generation immigrants, they were immigrants themselves. Mm-hmm. It's what they knew and understood. They know what being a lawyer was. They knew what being a doctor was. They knew what being an engineer was. So for them, computers and software was something new. But no, they were quite supportive in the sense that as long as, you were doing something you liked, you were doing something industrious and working at it, that they were supportive. So it's all about, what are you doing and are you contributing to something? And then I think now, again, the parallels between software and construction are there when I talk about, what are you building at work and how are you working at things at work? My parents can relate now, fast forward 20 years later, they can relate into, I understand what your job is now and how do you help me where I can go into online banking, do banking, that kind of stuff. So as I got into the IT space, my first job was actually programming again in the pharmaceutical industry. And again, I think, looking back, reflecting, I was really fortunate in the sense that my first few jobs, I was given the time, and time being the most valuable asset, I was giving the time of some very seasoned senior people who actually mentored me. And I find it very different than maybe the way people are being mentored now. Like, people would spend half their time of the day with me. I would follow them around. They would be there all the time for questions. And after a while, you kind of stop asking questions and start doing, and they start monitoring you. So I was really blessed in the sense that I had some really great mentors who allowed me, fed me some good information, helped me learn the basics in programming. And I got a lot of opportunity to get hands-on and develop, but also learn things about systems. And again, at that time, based on what we're doing in the pharmaceutical industry, it was exciting time. We were coding and collecting data, and the importance of data was kind of ingrained, and I got to learn that, which was really, really kind of fundamental. That's kind of like an important thing. You can program really great, but if you don't understand the data that you're getting and how it needs to be handled, things can go off course. So I did that for a couple of years, and what was really interesting was I was working for a company that had a satellite office in Canada, and we had some great ideas where we were like, hey, there's, rather than facts in data and try to use optical character recognition, which we were kind of fooling around with, why can't we, create some web forms? This is rudimentary stuff that people laugh at now. Why can't we create some web forms and capture data in a new modern way? And at that time, again, I think some of the feedback we were getting was, hey, you folks working in the Canada office, focus on what you're doing. We're working on corporate strategy here at Central. So at that point, for me, I knew I made a decision, and I wanted to, based on my career, I wanted to work for an organization. I wanted to work at a corporate headquarters where I could, apply new technology. I could start working on things. I could start influencing strategy. And it just so happened at that time, a couple of friends were being hired into the financial industry at CIBC. And I joined there, and I haven't really looked back. It's provided me, 2 decades of a variety of learning. I've kind of got my MBA in financials, working everywhere from the data space to the security space, application security, enterprise shared services, to leading teams into the digital space. So it's been really a rewarding journey where it's allowed me the opportunity to kind of learn a lot about the financial industry. And I'd say I'm still learning every day because there's so many facets to delivering finances.
I love that. Nobody ever wants to stop learning, and I think that's really a key trait. But I'm also, Lino, over the years, I'm sure you've led so many innovative and meaningful financial solutions. And I'm sure you'll agree that probably the most important ingredient here is the team. And so my question to you would be, what's your approach in building these teams, and where do you start?
Yeah, it's true. I think we were talking earlier about being sports fans and whatnot. I'm a big soccer fan, and I know your family's into soccer too. And I think it was Pelé, who passed away this year, who actually said, a team is a team. You can't be one person cannot bring a team to success. So it's true. Software development is a team sport. It's pretty, I'm not going to say anything that's, I don't think, groundbreaking, but I think it's really focus on the leaders. And I say leaders with an S, plural, because it's not one. You have different leaders at different levels. Like the organization is not just a triangle, one person at the top. It's a bunch of kind of pods with various leaders. So I try to focus on it, and over the years, I've kind of focused on 3 main kind of areas of the team. I know each team can have different configurations and makeup, but I find you need a leader and some strength in the design and architecture space. Kind of like, how are we going to build things? What are the frameworks? And kind of that, foundational type thinking. Again, very similar to the, I go back again, very similar to construction, right? You need the people who are going to draw the blueprints, draw the plans. Here's how we need to build things. Here's how we need to structure things. And then I'd say that there's a bunch of people who you need in the leadership around, okay, how do you execute? How do you deliver? So I focus on a leadership and leadership skills in the delivery side, who are people that can take the blueprint, rally the team, and execute and build. And then the other aspect that I think sometimes we forget, but it's really important with regards to building a team, again, a team that scales, and you're always thinking about growth. It's not just about delivering a project or delivering the software this version. It's about, okay, how do we grow and keep growing, is the aspect on the operations side. So I try to make sure that I kind of have leaders, like if you're thinking of a squad or a team, you kind of anchor those leaders on, okay, I have good solid leadership in design, good solid leadership in delivery, and good solid leadership in operations. And how do they intermingle becomes really, and collaborate, that becomes a really key ingredient to building a successful team.
Fantastic. And any key skills at that given time in the process? Are there some things that you're uniquely looking at? Any key skills there?
Yeah, I think apart from the hard skills, which I would kind of say that I've kind of, my perspective is hard skills are always important. Like, do you understand the technology that's being built? Is it a Java framework? Is it some other framework or whatnot? I think those are important because, again, you need to understand how things are built if you're going to actually, how to build things properly. We're talking about in order to build something, you kind of need to know, okay, what are the proper building blocks? But I kind of, when I'm looking for leaders across all three spectrums or even at any level, but I think the more senior, the more accountability you have, I kind of look across, there's some traits I look for. I look for ambition, and I'm looking for people who are generally not happy with status quo, people that are kind of like, how do I do a little bit better every day? That's kind of a key ingredient. And again, if you were building a team that was kind of focused around just keeping the status quo, maybe that's not as important of an ingredient. But for sure, in a team where you want to grow and improve and scale, the leader has to have a little bit of a dimension of being ambitious, not kind of settling for okay, but kind of pushing, okay, we did this, now how do we do next? I think the other element, again, that's important for a leader is the human side. So, you've heard people talk about EQ or emotional intelligence. The landscape is changing, like the demographics are changing, the makeup of our teams are changing. We're using software providers a lot more. We're using partners a lot more. It makes a lot of sense, right? So in order, when you have a very hybrid or distributed team, the ability for that leader to motivate, connect, soothe things sometimes, pull people into a room and say, hey guys, we need to work through this. That's really a key skill. And I think it's going to become more important as the shape of teams changes over the next little while, right? I do think demographically teams are going to get a little bit smaller and you're going to rely on distributed teams a lot more. I think those two are important. I think the other question that I typically love to ask during interviews actually is I ask leaders or people heading into leadership roles, how they measure how their team is doing, right? So I'm looking for people who have some KPIs or some metrics, like what is it that you look for to say your team and how you're doing is doing well. And I think that, you can have the ambition, you can be great with working the team, but if you're going to actually motivate the team over the long term and continue that growth path, you need to have a good set of, how am I measuring success of the team, course correction of the team. So having KPIs I'm looking at. And then the last ingredient is they have to be doers, right? It's great to look at the data. It's good to have the goals, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to sort of put those all together and execute. So I think all four ingredients, I kind of look for them. Obviously, people can be stronger in one, a little bit of other, but I think really successful leaders that I've seen on the team and that grown and been able to take a lot of stuff have usually a good blend of those skills altogether.
Yeah, I loved it. Like that was so well-rounded, like the curiosity, the hunger, the empathy, but also humanizing and also being able to inspire and then also be able to measure and understand how you're progressing and how you're going to do it. So I think it's a very, very well said. I loved it the way how you structured it.
Yeah.
And you build teams, not just here in Canada, you're building global teams, right? So, and I'm also thinking, are there any big, challenges, roadblocks that you've come across and how did you overcome them? Or like it has been always smooth and you found the right people, or just generally the team building, how difficult is that process?
Yeah, it is difficult, right? We're dealing with people. So, we're not all cookie cutters and everybody, has their styles and their motivation. That's why having that EQ element is really important. I think some of the challenges from a global perspective are appreciating culture. I know when we've started to work with and style, so that inclusionness thing, like let's say the message you give one person in one team may not resonate with another person in another team. So I know early on when we've had various partners in different geographies all over the world, making sure pre-COVID that you could travel out, meet with the people, build a relationship, understand some of the, not only cultural nuances, but also even individuals within the team, right? What motivates them? How are they motivated and all that kind of stuff. That's definitely a challenge that, during, the recent COVID times has been something that we've tried to, how do we mitigate that? And we try to help doing things that involve, the use of technology, doing things more virtually has allowed us to sort of build those bridges and do things that aren't just working together, but also socializing and recognizing each other. They've helped. So I think from a global perspective, having that sensitivity to the culture and the types of teams and when they're working too, because again, when you get into true 724, and I find a lot of us talk about 724, and even if I rewind back into my days probably when I was running different technologies and different groups within the banking industry. I thought I was running a 7/24 shop, but really you're running kind of like a 12-hour shop, and then overnight you're kind of keeping the lights on. And I think when you start to switch into, hey, the 24-hour shop is, hey, we're expecting development to get done. We actually have like a fluid team and all that kind of stuff. It really pushes you into understand all those aspects, be it geography, be it time zones, be it culture. So that's a key ingredient in kind of overcoming that, is you've got to go in not coming from a North American based time or an EST based time, but coming in from a little bit more of an inclusive thought process there. I think the other thing that's a bit of a challenge is finding that line with a star that when we talk about ambition, and sometimes I guess the analogy I would use is like a Formula One driver. You can go really fast, and your goal is to go as fast as possible right on that edge. If you go a little too fast, you're probably giving something up, you're going to skid off. And if you're going a little too slow, you're not going to get where you need to go. So I think the other aspect is the ambition part, where everybody's got this growth ambition, and especially in the portfolios that we run now, our goals are quite ambitious. We're not looking at single digit growth. We're looking at double digit growth every year, that kind of stuff. It's finding that balance where you are able to keep growing. And remember, I had said earlier, that's really where you need kind of the data and the metrics behind it to kind of say, hey, are we improving? Are we going? Can we go faster? How do we go faster? Because I think you need that ability to look at the data and track growth, because sometimes ambition can be seen as, or interpreted by people as, almost unachievable. Like, that's the one thing. Ambition shouldn't be you're striving for perfection with something. Ambition should be you're striving to improve day over day. How do you get better day over day? Because if you set yourself up saying, I need to be perfect, you're naturally going to create a little, some false expectations, and you're going to quickly become demotivated. And I think it's also unrealistic as human beings to assume that we are, want to get perfect at something. I think the goal is always how do you push people to play on that edge and aim for that edge? And I think we've been able to do that again. I think the key is having that blended set of skills. If you have a team anchored in that can kind of take a step back and go, hey, today we had a really bad day. It felt really bad. How do we get ourselves out of this, emotional? Did we hit a road bump today? Things don't feel like they're going well. You could quickly get into the place of, we're not achieving anything. We're not successful. But I think sometimes having that EQ, being able to step back, being able to kind of track your data over time allows you to get perspective, right? And then you can quickly look at it and go, hey, yes, when we do this over a period of time, we actually are seeing growth. And, the opposite is true as well. It's like, hey, we've tried this now a couple of times, tactic A and B, and we're going sideways. We haven't improved our speed of delivery. We aren't achieving the product results we expected by doing X, Y, Z. Okay, great. Now what are we going to do? So I find that the key is that if you're always kind of sampling the data, and you can kind of marry the emotional side of, I want to get better and ambitious, with the pragmatic data side, that you can kind of deal with some of those pain points that you might get in trying to build a high-performing team.
Yeah, while you were saying, I was thinking the pace of change, young, growth-hungry organizations, a lot of that credit of progress over perfection goes to the startup mindset and just the pace, how you want to keep going. But I think it's just generally become very important for all of us to recognize and appreciate. So a little switch.
Sure.
In the conversation, and how do you see the role of technology changing now?
I think it's more evolving. So again, I'd mentioned earlier, I'm a big believer. I'm kind of looking at a macro trend, especially in the Canadian landscape. And I do think that demographically, teams are getting smaller. If we can't kind of deny the demographics. So when you have smaller teams, I think for me personally, I think if I was kind of put on my crystal ball hat, I would say that teams in general, like having a big in-house software development team where you build your own stuff, that's just not a way of the future anymore. So for me, partnering with people, the team that you do have internally, being really good integrators, kind of being those people that build enough internally to maintain IP, but can also partner and choose the right technology partners, be it a product company or other companies, to help build what you need, I think that's going to become very critical. Because again, I think the goal is that as technology stewards, the goal is really to help drive value and growth, right? And we're never really building things for technology's sake. We're building things in order to enable the business. So for me, I think that role as integrators is becoming much more prominent. And I think it's going to become something that is going to become a basic requirement for leaders in the technology space, right? If you're just focusing simply on the tech stuff and the tech side, without thinking about the total cost of ownership piece, I think that's going to be a problem in the future for you. So I think that's really important to focus on those aspects.
I think you've given me a perfect segue of connecting technology and the role of technology with business. So, and how do you see what's the relationship?
Yeah, I think what you said there is very, very true. It is a relationship. It's never been closer now in order to be successful than I've seen it in my 20 plus years of working in software development with businesses. So just the culture that we have is very much business and tech side by side. We don't actually call ourselves business and tech. We just kind of all sit together, work together. So that relationship's critical. And it needs to get fostered from both sides. So the example I give people is, I love the current role I'm in. And part of the reasons I moved into roles and took some challenges that I'm doing now is I didn't want to be in the more traditional and roles where it's kind of the business comes up with a strategy. Business kind of says, here's what I want to go build it. And then we come back and say, hey, we built this for you. I would say, thanks very much. Everybody pats themselves on the shoulder and off they go. So we had the opportunity to work on teams where business actually wants our input. Like they understand the value of technology. And again, how does technology help me advance my business? So sitting at the business table, being able to understand and to be able to absorb what is it the business is trying to do, what products and services, why are these products and services being built in a certain way, what kind of clients are we targeting, how are we trying to help the clients, and a little bit of also understanding the full life cycle of the whole process. Again, if we go back to the construction phase, if you know what the building is going to be used for and how it's going to be used, you can keep that in mind as you're building the rooms and stuff, saying, well, the folks want to use it like this. I know this is going to work this way, so I'm going to sort of have better insights into as I build these things, they're going to fit more. So I think that relationship and having that fluidity is critical. Like there's no more, I don't see a successful scenario in the future where you don't have that close relationship. And it can create a little bit of uncomfortableness. Like I remember starting and working very close with business partners, sitting in business meetings and, absorbing marketing plans and client feedback and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, also, and what makes it fun is the business are also becoming more tech savvy. So you have to feel really comfortable sharing because you're almost co-owners of whatever business or product you're developing. So when we sit around the table, it's at first it can be a little bit where people are like, hey, why are you asking me, what tech stack I'm using, what frameworks I'm using, how I'm doing this. But once you start to realize that, hey, that will help them understand as well from a business perspective, I think it actually creates a really rewarding experience. And it ties back into like, this is how, as much as we enjoy the tech that we're using and using tech to solve things, how you connect that with what are we building this software? What are we building this product for? How does that work? So I think it's critical. And I think the success of our teams over the last decade, where we've employed this model of complete co-collaboration on everything, has shown really great results. So I think it's critical.
Yeah, no, I love that because it's so important to get out of that tunnel vision and really collaborate with a common purpose. I think the purpose unites everybody together on it.
Yeah.
So having to understand what technologies are being used rather than being territorial, it's more about how am I enabling you? And the other side is what are we trying to achieve? And what do I need to help you achieve? So I think that marriage between the two sides, it's absolutely critical. And I think you said it very well that it's absolutely rewarding and you're seeing that thing in practice.
Yeah. I think the other thing that helps with just add on that is we're always going to deal with some type of resource constraint. It's going to be, there's only so much funding we can get. There's only so many people that we can deploy. There's only so many projects we can work on. So the other added benefit around, that co-collaboration, understanding what are the business priorities, what are our clients' priorities, what's going to drive the biggest client satisfaction, what's going to help us grow the business the most, can help when you're in the weeds and you're working through features and sets and all that kind of stuff, saying, hey, if we go back to, is this really important? How do we narrow the focus? And I think that's also a key role for technologists to play. And like the CIO hat is managing the never-ending scope, because you can quickly get into, this would be a great feature and that would be a great feature. How do we do that with the product? But if we go back to teams getting smaller and the ability to sort of really focus those teams on the things that matters the most, that two-way dialogue between, the business side of it and the technology side becomes important. And we've gone back countless times to our business partners and said, if we did this way, you could still achieve will this help us you achieve your business goal? Because from a technology perspective, there's a cost implication to doing it that way. And those are the kind of conversations where we're actually adding value, because at the end of the day, we own the business together. So as technologists, we should care about how much things cost, how quickly we can change things, and how we can help the business grow. They all become important elements.
Fantastic. I hear some great culture and a very progressive mindset and a bit of healthy challenge with a very clear focus. Lino, we're coming up on our time, and I wanted to ask that now that you've experienced so much in your life and in your career, what message would you give to younger self?
Yeah, I'm hoping I can still take some of this advice, that I haven't aged myself out of getting advice. But I think for me, what I've learned over my career is that the most important things, because a lot of people will ask me, hey, you don't seem to get rattled. Obviously we're all working on stressful roles. You don't consider you rattled there. And how do you do that? Like, how do you manage through all the stress? And I kind of go back to the principle, and this is what I tell people that that ask for advice or that I mentor, is like, when you sit back and go, the most important things in your life are your family, your close friends, and your health. And if you take care of those, everything's going to be okay. Then my advice from a career perspective would be, it's okay to take more chances. And again, I'm not saying take every chance, not the model. I'm not saying be reckless, but there are probably what you can do if you know that you're grounded in the things that really matter in life. Taking some of those career chances, maybe trying something that you might have been a little hesitant to do, can only lead, I think, to more learning and more reward, because it's not going to be anything that's going to set you back too far. So for me, that would be the advice, is you're always going to probably reflect 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future. And it's those things that maybe you said, I wonder if I should have tried that. And again, I would encourage people to take those little bit of chances a little bit more, because the worst thing that could happen is you put something away from a learning experience around, okay, I either know I don't like to do that, or hey, I learned something new, a new aspect about something. That'd be my advice.
No regrets.
No regrets.
Fantastic. Lino, where can our listeners go and connect with you? I'm sure a number of them want to look you up. So any particular social channel where you could guide them?
Sure, yeah. LinkedIn. I'm available at LinkedIn. And once you connect with me there, I'm happy to reach out with anybody and chat some more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lino. Thank you for spending some time with us today. And it was an absolute pleasure to have you on Behind the Growth.
Thank you, Mudasar. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Behind the Growth. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow along on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. This podcast is brought to you by Mobile Live, a team of digital experts specializing in designing experiences, building products, and scaling technology. For more episodes of Behind the Growth, please visit mobilelive.ca/podcast.